So here we are on a Tuesday. The government shutdown is in full swing. The president's flying to Israel to try and take credit for any progress made in that nightmare, while he's sending National Guard troops wherever he wants, insanely claiming that inflation is defeated while most of America can no longer afford groceries, and the courts are scrambling to keep up. This is not normal. It feels like every branch of government is just staring at each other, waiting for someone to blink. Is this the moment the Constitution gets put to the test? Maybe. Let's talk about what the hell is actually happening and what it means for all of us. Welcome back to Sanish. Today's guest is Kim Wehle, a nationally recognized constitutional law expert, best-selling author, and one of the sharpest legal minds breaking down Washington's chaos. Kim is a tenured law professor at the University of Baltimore, a legal analyst for ABC News, and the author of several award-winning books, including her latest, Pardon Power, How the Pardon System Works and Why, which just won a 2025 Silver Award. She's the creator of the popular Substack, The Little Law School, and a go-to media voice on the Supreme Court's most consequential cases. Kim's passion is making law accessible to everyone, whether she's testifying before Congress, writing for The Atlantic and Politico, or simplifying the week's biggest legal battles for TV audiences. She is a brilliant voice, a dear friend, and I am so happy she's here today. But before we hear from Kim, a word about some friends of the show. If you're still overpaying for wireless, it's time to say yes to saying no. At Mint Mobile, their favorite word is no. No contracts, no monthly bills, no overages, no hidden fees, no BS. You want to know why it's smart to say yes to making the switch and getting premium wireless for $15 a month? Well, if you want to save money, and who doesn't, then it's time to think about getting rid of overpriced wireless from the big three. No more jaw-dropping monthly bills filled with unexpected overages and hidden fees. Who needs that? Especially when Mint plans start at $15 a month. And all Mint plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Plus, you can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and keep your phone number, along with all your existing contacts. It's that easy. Look, if I had needed this product, that's what I definitely use. Everything I've heard is that the service is just as good, if not better, than what you have. And $15 a month with unlimited talk and text? That's amazing. Seems too good to be true, but it is true thanks to Mint Mobile. So, are you ready to say yes to saying no? Then make the switch at mintmobile.com/JoJo. That's mintmobile.com/JoJo. JoJo. Upfront payment of $45 required, equivalent to $15 a month. Limited time new customer offer for first 3 months only. Speeds may slow, about 35 gigabytes on the unlimited plan. Taxes and fees are extra. See Mint Mobile for details. Now, here's Kim. How are you? How are you holding up right now? How are you doing?
I'm actually really well, Jojo. I think some of us, I'm sure, I don't know how you feel about this, knew this was coming. So I've been preparing for this for almost 10 years and have been sounding the alarm for a really long time. And as agonizing and sad as it is to see what's going on, particularly because we're both mothers and this affects our kids in ways that I think are hard to even fathom in this moment. There's almost a relief that it's catching on nationally how serious this is, because this has been in the works for quite some time. And the Trump administration is just following through on everything he anticipated and signaled he was going to do.
And yet, I think for me, even though I agree with you 100%, you and I had conversations about this both in the run up to and after the election. It feels like it's happening faster than I might have expected, or anticipated, or even braced for. And also to that end, I feel like, what Timothy Snyder has written about in terms of the number one rule is not obeying in advance. I have actually been surprised by how many have capitulated so quickly. So it feels like it's been more precipitous, but it also feels like people have just given up faster. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, fear is a really big motivator, and courage is in, it's fleeting in this moment. When you mentioned that I'd been abroad, I was actually in Amsterdam and the Netherlands for 5 months on a Fulbright, and did a lot of talking to people from that side of the pond, the Atlantic, about authoritarianism, about fascism, about the history in Western Europe of the rise of fascism in the 1930s, and spoke with one historian and expert who created the Holocaust Museum in Amsterdam, which is pretty young. And she said during the Second World War, it was only 1% of the population, just in terms of what historians have identified, that stood up and actually risked themselves in some way to save people who were being sent to their deaths, and to potentially put their families and their, their own selves in harm's way to fight back against fascism. So that kind of shocked me. But when I heard that figure and, witnessing what's happening here, it kind of makes a little more sense. But I agree with you. And I know we're going to talk about my column in Zateo in this pair of executive orders. One was a presidential memorandum, which basically declares Trump, people who are pushed back on Trump, domestic terrorists. I mean, we're seeing the invasion of Illinois, to use Governor Pritzker's word, that Chicago, Portland. I live in right outside Washington. We've seen it here. It's out in California. I mean, this administration has declared war on its own people, on the American people. And for the most part, folks are just kind of kicking back and saying, well, I don't know. There's nothing I can really do. It's too stressful. Let's wait for the midterms.
And also what I was thinking about this morning was that, like, you just go about your comfortable little existence, right? You're like, oh, I'm just going to go get my Starbucks and bring the kids to school. And then maybe I'll go over to Kohl's and then I'll drop off a return. And you live in these little insulated bubbles where, like, this stuff isn't impacting you yet, right? So it's easy for people to disconnect from all of that because that's somewhere else. That's happening in California, or it's happening in Chicago, or it's happening in Portland. They've never even been to Portland. They don't know what's going on in Portland. Maybe it is a hellscape, right? Like, I don't know. We go about our lives in these little insulated bubbles, and all of this terror, this treason, this authoritarian overreach is happening in other places, and I don't think that they're getting it yet. A lot of people, I don't think they want to, but I don't think it's touching them yet. But of course it will. But I feel like people are just like, oh, it's bad. What I see on the news is bad. So I can't even watch that. Let's talk about the new Aldi that's opening up in town. You know what I mean? And that's terrifying.
100%. The restaurants are buzzing and people are going about their lives and planning for Halloween and, getting things together for the holidays and, hanging out with their friends and talking about work and talking about life and, what their kids' school teachers like this fall. I mean, and you can't stop your life.
Right.
But this is so extraordinarily serious. We are in a moment, and we've seen retaliation for speaking out against the government. That is the most foundational component of our democracy. And, I'm a mom of 4, you have kids, you keep them healthy, you take them to the doctor, you get them educated, when they fall down, you help them up. I've spent years and years committed and dedicated to, developing a pathway for my children to have a rich and meaningful life. There is no rich, meaningful life if you cannot speak or associate with people because you fear retaliation from the government. That's the first component of what's so crucial and the heart and soul of what's at stake in this moment. The other piece, and we're seeing it on Instagram, is due process.
Yeah.
Is the violent arrests, assaults by masked agents that aren't even in any kind of uniform, whisking people off. The people that what happened? What was it in Chicago?
Yeah.
Parachuting or coming out of helicopters and putting zip ties on children.
Mm-hmm.
It's so hard to fathom. And I think you're right, JoJo. It's like, yeah, well, that's not me yet. We're a really big country. And I'm not a historian, but certainly in fascist Germany and other parts of Europe, people thought that too. Listen, it won't really matter for me. I can look the other way and pretend or just hope it'll blow over. And there are plenty of people, I think, that just assume that, or they don't know what they can do at this point. They have no idea, how do I push back? Or number three is it's just too stress inducing. And that's kind of our culture, is happy talk is what's acceptable. I mean, when people ask you how you are in America, you're supposed to say I'm great, even if you're not. It's kind of taboo to even say, gosh, I had a really hard day, or I had a big fight with my spouse, or, they found a lump. That's reserved for your closest friends. That's not the case in other parts of the world, where you can talk about things where, how are you? Actually, I'm really scared. I'm really worried. What's going to happen? That's very hard to have that conversation here. And I really noticed the change, Jojo, when I came back from 5 months in Europe. It was like almost a culture shock to come back here for that reason, among other reasons.
Really? Wait, I want to talk about that first, because I want to get into the essay on Zateo, because it's the title. Trump just issued 2 of his most dangerous directives yet. We have to talk about that because, well, for now we have the ability to talk about that, right? Until the knock comes at my door and somebody says, "Oh, Joe, you're criticizing the regime. They're here." But talk a little bit more about that difference that you just labeled right there. That huge shift from what you saw when you left and what you saw when you came back.
Well, when I first got there, people were skeptical in Europe as well about this idea that, okay, authoritarianism is on the rise in America. And then there was the Oval Office meeting with President Zelensky and President Trump and Vice President Vance, where they saw Zelensky being treated with extraordinary disrespect and humiliated and treated as an enemy and not an ally. And I think the Europeans were like, "Whoa, we're small countries. We're right next door to Russia, to Putin. We've been invaded before. Is the United States have our back? Are they still allies?" So that conversation shifted. But I agree with you. Since I've been back in June, a lot of people are talking about what happened in Hungary. That took 10 years for authoritarianism to take hold. It's happening in weeks in the United States. So there's that, talking about, even after the Zelensky meeting, wow, this is a concern. And people are like, "You really think so?" Wow, I'm kind of perking up and listening to it's actually here and it's unfolding before our very eyes. But just on a more kind of day-to-day personal level, and just life experience level, it was really shocking to me how capitalism is our culture in America. And that's not the case in other parts of the world, where what you do, how much money you make, how famous you are, how much agency you have publicly, who your friends are, where, at least inside the Beltway, where you went to college, where who you're married to, whether you're married, if you're gay or straight, what your race is. It's almost like we apply this complex algorithm in our minds to people, and we size them up. And a lot of it comes down to the almighty dollar, this American dream. And we value each other based on that. Mm-hmm. That it doesn't matter what your moral clarity is and how kind of a person. I mean, that's sort of important, but really in terms of how our government and how our social structure and our economy works, it's about money. That wasn't the case in Europe. It was really more about ideas, and people lived their lives, and you work to live, not live to work. That really struck me, that how invested we are in that. And of course, hate is really, really profitable, Jojo. Hate. There are a lot of people, the companies on the stock exchange, that top companies that are making a lot of money off of our clicks and our attention that we give them for free. And the more hateful it is, the more money they make. And we're kind of in this death grip. And I know we're getting a little afield from the Donald Trump orders. But that struck me kind of just on a social, personal level. With respect to the orders, he declared Antifa in a terrorist organization that violates. First of all, Antifa doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Oh wait, know that from the FBI.
You didn't get the invite to the meeting. You're not bringing the banana loaf, Kim. We were counting on you. Sorry.
Yeah, that's right. No. Although, can I say, see, Antifa means anti-fascist. I'm really not down for fascism in the United States. So, I'll bring the banana loaf if it means that we're going to push back against authoritarianism, fascism in the United States. Like, I don't think that's ambiguous for either of us, right?
Right.
And so it's a problem under the First Amendment, freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, to declare Americans somehow terrorists. It's never been done in the history of the FBI. It would violate the First Amendment. So this is a brand new thing. You can declare foreign terrorist organizations. Congress has given the Secretary of State the authority to do that, and the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has done that since January 20th. And then if you're a citizen or American and you facilitate the work of a foreign terrorist organization, you can get in trouble. But declaring a domestic terrorist organization, that's unheard of. There's no law authorizing that. And then a few days later, after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, he issued his second order, which is even more terrifying because it basically declares anyone who is not is anti-American, anti-government, anti-family values, anti-Christian, all these broad umbrella things, potentially terrorist, and authorizes or directs that the full weight of federal law enforcement be brought down against these people. So this isn't an attack on free speech, on dissent, on anyone who doesn't toe the party line. And we're a really big country, JoJo. Yeah. So is this going to put everybody in jail? Of course not. But that's not the point. The point is the fear.
Right.
There's a famous experiment that a philosopher by the name of Jeremy Bentham did in the 1800s, where it was actually a thought experiment about how to create the perfect prison. And he called it the panopticon. And the theory was that if you put a guard in the central watchtower and you create a circle of cells, of prison cells, and the prisoners can't see the watchtower, eventually all the prisoners will behave and follow the rules because they never know when they're being surveilled and they could be punished. And that is kind of, I think, the idea behind this fear tactic that's spreading, is that you never know if it's you, and you just need to pop off a few people that you do know to get everybody in line. And we're seeing it happen in universities. We're seeing it happen in the media. We're seeing it happen with, on the Supreme Court. Excuse me. I don't know if that's fear or if that's just, they buy into this slip into something other than American democracy and the majority on the Supreme Court. But it's much more psychological, JoJo, than it is anything else. That's what these orders, I think, are designed to do. And once he really acts on them, as you indicated earlier, I think the fear is going to potentially spread pretty quickly.
Right. I mean, that prison behavioral thought experiment is fascinating because it is true. And so many of my friends in the, content creation, new media space, have said, like, are you worried? Are you afraid? You know what I mean? Like, are you concerned? And all it's going to take is one or two or three prominent people who speak out on a regular basis, being pursued in this way under this bullshit anti-Trump, because you wrote the president is taking steps to criminalize being anti-Trump in America. That is absolutely what's happening. So like they did where you saw this chilling effect with universities and then just started lining up one by one, and law firms too, where they were like, well, I don't want to, be the target here. The intention would be 100% to start doing this to people who are speaking out prominently. I mean, Miles Taylor wrote a book and criticized in an anonymous op-ed and criticized Trump, and Trump is going after him in an investigation. Obviously, we have seen what's happening with James Comey. I mean, these are not, they're not necessarily only vocal critics of Donald Trump. They also, exposed things about him that he very much wants retribution for. But as you were talking, I wrote the word fear in a big bubble, because that is central to all of this. And eventually that's the kind of stuff that will permeate these bubbles where all we're talking about is going to Aldi, because my girlfriends now will send like memes and funny jokes about Trump and cartoons and stuff. And at some point, if this travels far enough down the road where we are definitely heading, some of that will stop because people will say, I can't have that on my phone. I can't travel if I have this shit on my phone. We've also seen that. But the fear in all things, it's very powerful, obviously, but it's also very pervasive. And when you're talking about this nebulous, like, that's anti-American speech, that can be anything they decide. That's what terrifies me. So like, what do we do? You know what I mean? It's like, where is the superhero that's coming, Kim? Because we can't hold on until the midterms if this keeps moving at this pace.
Well, even if the Democrats sweep the House of Representatives, which I'm not an expert in politics, but I don't think the numbers, at least from my friends who do follow this very carefully, the numbers in the Senate are not even feasible in the best case scenario. So the best thing that happens is the House of Representatives. Yeah. What is it going to do? Is it going to impeach him? They can't convict him without the Senate. Is it going to pass laws that he'll ignore? He's been ignoring lots of laws. The Supreme Court's allowed him to ignore laws, allowed him to ignore the Constitution. And we are in a post-rule of law presidency. It's lawless. And the Supreme Court is saying that's okay. Mm-hmm. So we need, experts have also done the research to say that to actually turn this around, you need 3.5% of the population on a consistent basis to push back. What is that in America? It's 11 to 12 million people every day. And I know some people said, well, Jimmy Kimmel, yay, that turned things around. Yeah, it did. But that's a private company. Or a publicly traded company, ABC News, with which I'm affiliated. They looked at I don't know, I have no inside scoop, but that was pressure on a private, a non-governmental entity. That's not going to slow down Donald Trump.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of sustained collective pressure, whether it be protests, whether it be boycotts, whether it be, showing up. There was a clip, I think it was in Chicago, where there was a man being abducted by, masked agents, and people intimidated these agents, so-called agents, to the point where they got in their van and went away. So it's not going to Aldi. It's not hanging the decorations all day. It's every single day, every single person spending some time that day doing something.
Yeah.
Something. And watching stuff on social media and reposting it is not enough. And I don't even know if people are even doing that. There's this sense that some of us who are in the arena will carry it for everyone else. But no, I think you're right, JoJo. I don't know that it's just going to be famous people that are ensnared in this. These orders from Trump are not tailored to people like Miles Taylor or James Comey. They're tailored to anybody.
Yeah.
And the FBI has a lot of authority and a lot of power to surveil you, to follow who you're talking to then follow up on whoever you're talking to. If you're a foreign terrorist organization, the government can freeze assets. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. He's unfortunately has the reins of all this authority. And the Republicans in Congress and the United States Supreme Court majority, frankly, have blood on their hands in this moment. They're the ones that are allowing this to happen. And anyone under the voting age in America, any child in America is going to pay the price with their own freedoms. They cannot do anything right now. It's up to us.
Yeah, 1,000%. I talk about this all the time, like as it pertains to small things, even like this shutdown, right? Like, so the fact that they're trying to spin this shutdown on and pin it on the Democrats, and they're trying to run away from the truth of what they're doing to healthcare, et cetera, and why the Democrats are not going along with it. So what I try to do with my own friends is literally just give them the facts, right? Like, this is one act of resistance is to tell someone else the truth in this moment, to tell the person at the gym who checks you in, who's like totally checked out and sitting there scrolling on their phone. Honestly, these are acts of resistance to arm people with the truth. Because one thing that I would actually say, and it's sad to say, that is an opportunity or to our advantage at the moment, is that he is fucking up so badly. They are fucking up so badly that shit is much more expensive. Life has already gotten much harder. And these premiums, these healthcare premiums, even fucking Marjorie Taylor Greene is like, hold on. Like, this is nuts. And she could never lose her seat. She's not beholden to the whims of her constituents. That's as deep red a seat as there'll ever be. She moved there for that reason. But on its face, it is painful. And the people are going to start feeling it. And that's when there's an opportunity, sadly, to be like, this is the truth of what's happening right now. And that in and of itself is an act of resistance and opposition in this moment, which is scary to say, but it is, and that's what they're trying very hard to weaponize and to suppress and to criminalize and to turn into treason.
Yep. There's not two sides to this.
Right.
It's not a red versus blue. And I think you're right. The cost. I mean, I was at CVS with my teenager getting our flu shots and COVID vaccines. I'll say it. I don't want COVID again. And she wanted some gum. It was $6.
Oh my God.
For gum.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not sustainable.
Mm-mm.
That is not sustainable. And then people are like, well, can they really want to put so many people in poverty? Do they really want to just demolish the government right now? There's a problem with air traffic controllers, right? We really want planes crashing into each other. People don't understand. And I taught this for 20 years in various classes. Government is a good thing for a lot of reasons. There's some bad parts of the government, but all these deep state folks that are getting fired, they're mostly experts, dedicated their lives to public service. And there's a lot of stuff that government does that we depend on and that matters for the health and safety and well-being of our families and our communities. And when that's all gone, it is not easy to recreate that, even if there's a new president in 3.5 years, which I'm not so sure he's bluffing when he talks about running for a third term.
He never bluffs.
But he never bluffs. Thank you. He never bluffs.
No.
That's why these two orders have to be taken seriously, right? He does not bluff. He said 100 times he was going to start prosecuting political enemies. 100 times he said that on the campaign trail, and it's starting, right? I wrote about that back in February. So it will come for people. And I think you're right. Threading the needle and saying, this is why it's happening. It's not about Chuck Schumer, though, he's that side of things are feckless. And there's not really a fighting energy there enough.
Yeah.
But 1 + 1 = 2. We all know what's going on here. I don't have any easy answers. There's never been easy answers, Jojo. But a year ago, if we had this conversation, we could talk about what to do. I think it's going to take some kind of magic that will only manifest when enough people decide to make it their problem. And then I think when you have millions of Americans coming together and saying, no, I can't predict what will happen, but I guarantee that something will happen. I guarantee it. But not with a bunch of freeloaders who are like, it's not my problem. I don't want to think about it.
No, you and I have had this conversation before too, where sometimes, we've talked about building out of rubble, right? You know what I mean? Like, it may very well require, you've talked about how it was untenable, the way we were moving. The politics as usual, we're moving towards the edge of a cliff no matter what. Trump or not, right? Like we were moving in the wrong direction to begin with. And maybe that when you break it all down from that rubble, we can actually build something new that is stronger, more sustainable, as we've seen in several European countries, as we've seen in, democracies that have come out of resistance to dictators and despots and authoritarians. But like on some level, maybe it's going to require, and I don't want this for anyone. Fucking hell, I don't want this for my children. It's hard not to want to cut and run, right? But maybe when people suffer enough, and they do want the suffering, they want the chaos. Dictators love that shit, right? They come in and take even more power and more rights away because you're too busy trying to just feed your family, keep the lights on, have a house, have a roof. Maybe that thing you're talking about that gets enough people to stand up and say no, it's going to require what is coming, not coming in large measure, what's already here and is only going to get worse. And I don't want that for my country. I don't want that for my people. But if this is the moment we're in, this may be the only outcome.
And this is translates into our everyday life, right? I remember my mom died in, what was it, 2006, and there was like 8 weeks of just such clarity about what matters in my life. And if you've ever been sick or really sick or had a loved one that was, I mean, you have these moments in life where you lose a job or really devastating, a divorce, devastating things happen, really, really hard things, and you're like, okay, what matters? My health, my children, so it really boils things down and you realize you don't need that much, but you do need those things. Yeah. And I agree with you. And we have talked about this, and I teach students and I say, your moment will come to build something better. Back to my point about capitalism, there's a series of Supreme Court cases, that really degraded our democracy long before Trump came into power. Historians will say we weren't really a functioning democracy until the civil rights era and the various legislation, the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act that, President Johnson signed with the support of Martin Luther King Jr. that actually opened voting to all Americans. When the Constitution was ratified in 1788, it was just wealthy white males that had any agency, had any voting rights. Women weren't in the fray until 1920. Women were considered basically, there were laws of coverture. Women had no rights. They had no rights even to their own children throughout most of American history. If their husband decided to kick them to the curb, they had no rights to the shirt on their back. They couldn't own their own wages. And this is setting aside, of course, the deep history of enslavement and racism. And then we had, basically, in a case called Citizens United, the Supreme Court declared corporations human beings that have, as if they're like, have birth certificates and social security numbers when it comes to the First Amendment. They've got the right to free speech, even though they're legal fictions. They're not even buildings. They're nothing. You make a click and there's a corporation, right? They're designed to protect assets and minimize tax liability. And when the Supreme Court said, okay, not just the people in the corporations, the CEOs and the secretaries or whatever, and the workers, they all have First Amendment rights to participate in politics, but the entity of the corporation does too. Mm-hmm. This concept has First Amendment rights. So what happened is Congress then could not regulate corporations' ability to spend money speaking about election candidates. So they started pouring money, unregulated money, into advertising to get this senator or that member of the House of Representatives or that president elected. And they don't care about free speech. They don't care about freedoms and liberties and your family. They have to care about profits. Legally, they have to care about publicly traded corporations. Their legal obligation is to maximize profits. Mm-hmm. So that just created this messed up situation where our elected officials aren't really listening to voters because they have to stay in power, right? So why do we have supermajorities that want reasonable gun control, supermajorities that want reproductive rights, supermajorities that want reasonable immigration policy? And we're not getting it. That was before Trump. Yeah. So we are in this moment where I think the best case scenario is a lot of it breaks and we get to fix it. That's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is that it breaks and it's broken and we're a broken country for a long time. And that's honestly, Jojo, something I can't even wrap my head around and I'm not willing to accept.
I mean, you're absolutely right in terms of this being broken before Trump. We've talked about this off camera. Trump just has always felt like, for me, like a fungus or like a mold, like moss, but like toxic moss. That these cracks were already there, right? He was just one of the first to ever inhabit them because he's shameless and because that's the way he operates, because he doesn't have actual merit to have ideas of either repairing the cracks or working around the cracks or whatever. He had to fill them. And he's filled them. They were already there, but he's filled them now enough that they've split wide open and there's these chasms in there and all of this chaos that is happening so quickly. He's in many ways the catalyst for, but also at the same time, not the origin point. You know what I mean? That they were there. But nothing stopped him or encumbered him from spreading. And also now that we've seen the fecklessness and the cravenness of elected officials on both sides, but obviously the lack of gatekeeping in the Republican Party, period, because to your point, very astute point, they are not beholden to their voters anymore. They don't care about their constituents. They don't really care about polling on issues. They want power. And for them, the way to do that is to just line up, with Trump and everything he does, because they don't work. They're not concerned about the constituents because they're beholden to other things that are bigger than that for them. That is a broken system. And you're right. Like, how we come back out of this and still go back into that, because you can't, right? Like, that's still going to be there. It's still going to exist both in the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. It's still going to be there. That is a fundamental thing. Those cracks, they actually have to be repaired. Like, we have to sweep out the mold and the moss and all of that festering pus, but we have to address the fundamental problems that pre-existed what filled those cracks. And that's the big work. That's the big work. And hopefully that's the best case scenario, right?
People are suffering. People, it's just harder to be in the world and to live in the world in America than it was 20, 30 years ago. Even though there's some benefit, we've had a lot of positive change. And I think Trump understands that. He speaks to people's pain, and government hasn't addressed it. And he's also sending a message that the enemy is each other.
Yeah.
And that's really corrosive. And so, there's a couple things I just wanted to just underscore about what people can do. I mean, not everyone wants to get out and march or even put themselves out. But you can educate yourself, and that's what you said. And I know you and I have worked before on a lot of this stuff, but I also have a Substack. It's called The Little Law School, where I give basic lessons in the law. That's number one. Just learn. And I, books on the Constitution and stuff, they're all user-friendly stuff. They're designed to give people agency around their own government so you can understand how it functions. You don't have to listen to me. You can understand. It's absolutely crucial to have the clarity around that. That's number one. Number two, and this is getting harder and harder, Jojo, even for me, be kind. Just be kind today. Be kind to somebody. We are in a culture of hate. We're in a culture of suspicion. We're in a culture of anger. We're in a culture of grievance. Be kind. I mean, you talk about spreading the cancer of this negativity. I think we can spread the light as well. So if you don't want to get involved in politics, I mean, deliberately, you go to Aldi, talk to the person that is bagging the groceries or outside, like, hi, how are you today? That actually does change the dynamic in that moment of that person's day.
Mm-hmm.
And we're way too far in this dark, threatening, everybody's against me world. I'm such a victim. If my life is difficult, it's because of someone else. And that's real. I'm not trying to say life is difficult for people for a lot of reasons. It's hard to feed people to feed their families, find a good job. Technology, AI is scaring people. I mean, all kinds of things. But the antidote to that is lightness and joy and kindness. Kind. Why people can't be kind, I don't understand. I just don't understand. It's free.
Yes, it's free. And it's why so often, I mean, kindness, I know, God, no, I know that I don't approach MAGA with much kindness, to say the very least. But I try as often as possible to have levity. And that's my sort of version of that. And community, right? So to me, to your point, that is absolutely crucial right now because they very much want us to hate each other. This is by design, right? Like it's also, the work of, we could blame a million things, right? Social media, too much access to everybody all the time, all those things, right? But there is definitely, this is the antidote. And to your point, but the problem, not the problem, a problem is that we've seen polling now for the first time, I think since they've been doing this kind of polling, where they asked people, do you feel like we can bridge these divides, these gaps, these divisions? And people say no. No, there is no consensus to be built here. It is too far gone. And that's also very disheartening, but that's also by design, right? So the way you combat that is that you connect to people in little ways and big ways. And I also think, like, to that end, I think that when we see some of this imagery, this horrible, horrific, disgusting imagery of children, for instance, crying, of fathers being pummeled, of a woman being pushed and then trampled on by ICE, these images, by and large, I do think that no matter what your politics, I think we still have that capacity within us to feel something for that person in that moment. I think we have to remind everybody of that humanity, of that. It's not like light in that scenario, but it is your heart. Your heart feels something when you see that, something that's trying to be taken from you. And I think that is the way. It's harder than ever, and they want to shut those avenues that we have for all of that down. But we still have this moment, and I don't want to look back on the other side of this moment and be like, why didn't I? I could have, should have, would have, but I didn't. And that's the thing, like, that's... Sorry.
Well, that's why I stay in it too. When people say, why do you keep speaking out? I want to leave the world a better place than it is now. And doing nothing will make no difference whatsoever. If you do nothing, nothing will change.
Right.
That's 100% guaranteed.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, you know how I get.
You have a big heart, so I have a big heart, where our, one big heart plus another big heart makes a really big heart. So I appreciate you.
Yeah,
I appreciate your fierceness and your courage and your honesty and your authenticity. All of those traits. The other story in Amsterdam, there's a theater there that I think about 60,000 Jews were processed out of to the death camps. And 2 doors down was a daycare center. And in between, I'm getting chills talking about this. In between, there was a school, and the school was independent, but they would separate the parents from the children. The parents would go to the death camps out of the theater. The kids would go to the daycare care center and go to the death camps out of the daycare center.
Jesus.
And the nannies in the daycare center, young women, somehow got messages through the school to the parents, and they developed a system to get some of these kids out safely. And the entire school, the custodians, the teachers, the director of the school, the parents, everybody maintained the secret. And the caretakers would have to get the messages to the parents in the theater to get their permission to take the kids to safety. Can you imagine? You have to say, you basically have to face, I know I'm going to die, but I give you authority, stranger, to save my child. And they got like 600 of them out.
Oh my
and
God.
These young girls, they would teach these children to look at their feet, to not look up, to not use any language. They would take them to Central Station, where the trains were. The Nazis, the SS were all there, and pretend that they were, and have to carry on this act to get through the scrutiny with these Jewish children. And some of them got out. A lot more got murdered because they had to keep that up, that was what the processing center was. But I just had this, I was like, oh my gosh, that story just shows, when I talk about the magic, Jojo, when I talk about the magic that is possible for Americans to come together, it's happened in human history. These people risked everything to save these children, and they did it. It's stunning. There's a tram out in front, and they would time it so that they could move the children when the tram was right in front, so the soldiers couldn't see. It gives me chills to this day. It's just, and there are many, many, many stories. There's all these people in history books, the famous people, but it's not just the famous people. It's the unnamed people.
Right.
And it's the unnamed people in this moment who need to stand up.
I could not agree more. And what an unbelievably dark and yet inspiring story. But we do need extraordinary acts during these extraordinary times. And we need warriors like you, Kim. You are, we've had this conversation before, but you really are a warrior. You are forged in steel and in fire, and I'm so grateful to you. I'm so glad to reconnect screen to screen. We've talked on the phone. We're going to talk more because well, we have to. But your heart, your authenticity, your fire, your power, your clarity, it is absolutely crucial and critical to whatever we're navigating now and whatever comes next and how we navigate that. So I cannot wait to have more conversations with you, more collaborations with you on a human level, on an educational level, and an empowerment level, because you know what, you're right about people just going to this stuff and understanding what this means, what is happening in this moment, what their rights are, what the law provides. That's incredibly important. Knowledge is power, and they very much want to take it from us.
And why we have a constitution? We have a constitution because the revolution, people in the revolutionary generation didn't want a monarch that was bossing them around and arbitrarily picking and choosing winners and losers. Yeah. That's why we have it. Why we have it. And so we're in a moment where we're going to have to fight for it again.
Yeah.
If we want it, if that's what we want.
Exactly. I also do not want Trump fucking money. I'm just going to say that. I don't want that little fucker's face in my pockets or my children's hands. Luckily they don't know what money is anymore, because they just don't, because it's like Apple Pay grows on trees for them. But we remember why we have a constitution, because overwhelmingly, no matter what your politics are, or what kind of hate you want to traffic in, or what you think is owning us or making us cry harder, us libs, you actually want that constitution. It actually works for you too.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's it. It's not a political thing. And I think there are some people that are just never they're too far gone. I talk to friends and students all the time who have family members that are just, I don't understand it. They're just so not penetrable. I want to get the truth, but there are plenty of people that understand this, that just don't want to deal with it. Those are the ones that we can hopefully, join hands with.
Agreed. And we will. And that's what we do. And that's why we do what we do. So I'm grateful for you as always.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, please, guys, check out all of Kim's work on Zateo, on her own Substack, everywhere, and her books. We have next time we'll talk about pardons, because you wrote a whole book about that. Trump is trying to go after those with the auto pen bullshit. We'll talk about all that, but we'll have many, many conversations moving forward. Thank you so much, my friend Kim. Thank you.
It's always so great to chat with you. Thanks for having me.
Sorry for the ugly crying.
Oh no. Oh no, I'm very moved. I'm moved. You moved me.
That's it for today's episode of Sanish. A huge thanks to Professor Kim Wehle. If today made you think, please share this episode and hit subscribe. Thanks for listening, and stay sanish out there.